a lot sooner than I actually planned to. But all that has been said and what has been done in the last 48 hours concerning the government's plan to go and put a housing project on Dunbars estate, the surrounding areas. I feel that it's important for me, somebody who lived in the area, to talk about Dunbars and Friars and what I knew or what I saw or what I can recount, not only for myself, but my mother and my four siblings. I'd just like to share some of that with you. Um, what is important for me to tell you is that I came home to Antigua and Barbuda in August of 2002. And at that point in time, my father, Vere Bird III, was the Minister of Agriculture and Lands. And he was his ministry was to the east of Country Pond. When I visited him when I came home, going into his office, we saw up on the walls all these big maps of Antigua and Barbuda, the entire country. And it had the sections of the country laid out in different colors: red, blue, yellow, green, where they had the tourist sector, and that was what was designated there. They had the housing sector, planning to build housing plots and lands and what was going to be available for citizens or where they're going to help people build houses and so on. They had the environmentally protected area, right? They also had the areas where the farming was going to be done in Antigua. So we're talking about what? 2002? That's roughly 20 years ago, 21 years ago, 24, yeah, 22 now. And that being said, the whole idea from what I believe 20 years ago was that the leaders at that point in time had planned for Antigua and Barbuda to have various sectors of the island to carry out these projects. Now, what we heard, right, from Chet Green and some of these other individuals in the last 48 hours is that they don't know what the plan was because the rest of the country had no idea. They made a plan. They did not discuss it at the budget speech because at the point in time where you decide that you're going to put housing plots on Dunbars, you would figure that the prime minister's budget speech would say less money for agriculture because we're not going to have any agriculture now, especially wiping out the last remaining public farm plots in the north of the country. That being said, my whole idea is that you have to run a country on a plan. You can't just, the Minister of Lands and the Minister of Agriculture can't just pull a rabbit out their ass and tell you, hey, this is what we're going with today. We feel like we're no longer going to have any properties up at Dunbars. And that being said, you'd figure that at some point in time, before this debacle took place, in the last month really, that we would have known what is taking place up at Dunbars or what isn't going to be happening up there anymore. I would just like to know as a taxpayer from the Minister of Agriculture and the Minister of Lands if they can direct me, Vere Bird III, to where the plans for the layout of the country. I would admit that 22 years ago is a long time in politics. Different individuals, different governments, and government can always change its minds and set down new policies and plans. But that being the case, I would like to know what is the plan for agriculture in Antigua and Barbuda. I would like to see a layout of what is intended. Because we have heard that all the period of time that agriculture is important. But what we hear and what we see are two different things. We've seen very little intention to develop the country with some form of reasonable amount of agriculture as part of our economy, of our industry, what we as a people produce for food security. And that is a concern for me. So I'm just asking anybody in government, can you tell me where I can go? Can I get a physical copy of a map of what the plan is to develop this country, the tourist sector, the economical, special economic zones, the farming zones, the environmentally protected areas, because I remember the Prime Minister, even when they were going either in the early part of this administration, it was pointed out to him by the environmentalists and several concerned citizens that the land that you all are talking about, either up on the North Coast, is protected area because of its cultural, economical, environmental importance to Antigua and Barbuda, that we preserve it. It was preserved. And that is what I saw on the map in my grads office. They had the environmentally protected areas. And some places are not supposed to be interfered with. But things change. I just want to go in to say that this matter with Dunbars is very dear to me because I was born in Antigua and Barbuda on the 27th of October 1971. When they carried me home from the hospital, Halberton, I went right there to Friars Estate. Vere Bird Jr., Etlin Bird, his wife, their 5 children, Elena, Darren, Kim, me, and then later on my brother, the last one, Damien. And the other person that was living with us was Papa Bird, V.C. Bird Sr. That was his house. You understand? And what I know about Dunbars, the Cotton Station, and Friars Estate is that when Antiguan people or black people came off the boats as slaves, they were considered to be animals. They were out there in the fields, just like you'll have a pig, you'll have a cow, you'll have a goat, and we were considered animals, beasts of burden. And they had a nigger house, and we were out there in the rain and all the jigger and all the lice and all the other ailments. You're just like an animal. Maybe they might throw an extra crocus bag over you at night and put some sort of a dust or cream helping you from getting bitten by lice and scabies. We were animals in their minds. We got our emancipation in 1834, and after that we were laborers. They didn't use slave, but it wasn't much better. We were laborers, so we worked on these plantations, Dunbars and Friars Estate. Then what happened? In the year 1967, the 27th of February 1967, we achieved associated statehood. But on achieving associated statehood, at that point in time, Papa Bird, on behalf of the Antiguan people, purchased the lands, the majority of the lands in Antigua and Barbuda from the Sugar Syndicate. We went from being no better than animals to being laborers, to being the owners of these estates. And that is why the lady in the video that George Wenner put out also made the mention that Dunbars was established in 68. It is relevant for our political, cultural, historical identification as a people, because we were the ones that established these estates. Dunbars was established to look about our agriculture, to get bigger yields, to research, and to experiment in getting bigger yields and stronger crops to fight off diseases, so on and so forth. Sweeter and bigger and all of that. That was Dunbars. Friars Estate, where I lived, was designed to deal with livestock, to get bigger, stronger, goat, cow, sheep, whatsoever, to increase and to produce better product. And that was what the history of these 2 estates were. Our ancestors, upon attaining ownership of these estates and these lands, decided that they were going to have Dunbars and Friars Estate and the cotton gin just above Friars Hill Bluff to be established to improve our lot in agriculture and in livestock. The cotton gin was solely based for the cotton industry. And you're wondering how Antiguans sit back and allow this to happen to their history. Because I hear them saying, oh, the fields have strychnine or some sort of poison in it. But even if the fields were lying fallow for another 10, 15, 20 years, or even if they weren't even being used to any great extent, cultural significance of these estates would say that these estates ought to be part of the national park and that we preserve them for future generations. Tourists are supposed to come off the cruise ship and go touring Dunbars estate and seeing the Sea Island cotton, the very best in the world. And why I got on this podcast, because you have to realize how much we have given up of our agrarian roots. Because when I was a child, you'll walk up Friars Hill and all around was just farms. When I was a child and you shout towards Friars Hill, you don't shout down the road, you shout towards Friars Hill when you're on Friars Hill State, you hear an echo because there was nothing around. Your voice would echo. I'm telling you, because I experienced it. When you walked up Friars Hill Road and the cotton station on the left-hand side, you make the right there by Cedar Valley. And you walk towards the golf course. And after the golf course, there were farms going all along that side. People were trying to make a living for their families, coming from Cedar Grove and coming from New Winthrops and the various close areas where the people used to live. You go straight up the road there and you bump into the pond. And you make the right just before you New Winthrops. Right there, they have a housing development. Some of the houses were even sinking. I remember when I came, I said, wait, some of the houses were all inundated with water at some points in time. But I'm telling you, you go past the golf course, they were farms. They have Stanford, who put up his housing development there. You go further along past the pond, you're making the right, they put up another housing development. How much? How much more? Every single piece of land must go to housing development. Does that make any sense? After we come through a pandemic where there was, what do you call it again? The global slowdown in the food chain, in the supply chain. You talk about the entire area. So we talk about Cedar Valley. They had two housing developments. The one just around the corner there, going towards Cedar Valley and to what you call over there now, Casada Gardens. And then you had Stanford. And then you remember Mount Pleasant. A lot of people from Cedar Grove and Barnes Hill and New Winthrops used to plant in Mount Pleasant. We gave that up. Housing development. Everything is for housing development. From the looks of it, it's only about 15 acres on the right side of the road from Dunbars, or the west, or the eastern side, and another 15 acres on the western side. So you're saying 30 acres of prime agricultural land cannot be preserved for future generations in the north. But that's bad enough. But when you look at the history of Dunbars, and you look at the history of Friars Hill Estate, those and the cotton station, those were like the Harvard, Yale, and Oxford in Antigua and Barbuda for agriculture and livestock rearing. That's what it was. That's what it is. And those things could be profitable today, but nobody's putting any money into it. You talk about Sea Island cotton. And what I like to tell the people of Antigua and Barbuda, I left Antigua in 1983. I used to see people planting and reaping their harvest of cotton. I went away, 83, finished St. John's University in government and politics. Then I eventually went to England to read law. Completed my law degree and became an author barrister of Bar of England and Wales in 2000. And before I came back home to live in 2002, I said, let me go and buy 2 nice shirts. I picked up a magazine called Charles Truitt Shirts Limited. It's fine shirts, fancy shirts. So I look in the book and I see 40, 50, 60 pounds. There's a company in the United Kingdom. Take the 50-pound shirt. I can't afford no more. You have to start somewhere in life. So the first 2 or 3 pages is where I got my shoe shirts. I still have them up to today. I still wear them from time to time. Not much. I don't go too much with all this COVID and all this craziness going on to Antigua. So I don't wear too much. Nowhere to. I don't like to be all dressed up and nowhere to go. But let's get back to the story. So, look in the book Charles Truitt, and if anybody who knows Charles Truitt, the more you go to the back, is the higher the price of the shirt and them. So what? Me buy the 50-pound shirt, and you go in and you see 100, and he's seeing 200 pounds, and you see 300 pounds. I say, hey, let me look at the shirt, then that I'll buy in the future at some point in time. When you reach there yet, 20 years later, but can't reach the end of charge to it. But what I saw in the book before I came out was his fancy shirts, charged to it. Sea Island cotton from Antigua in the West Indies. I was so proud because I know where that cotton came from. That cotton came from just about 100 yards from where I lived at Friars. I can take you where that cotton came from. My idea was to buy a couple of those shirts and say, this material is from Wadadley. Sorry to say, that may never happen now. Because I can't afford the shirt. And got some of them. Can't lick down the cotton farm. Those estates were to be the Ivy League of agriculture and livestock in Antigua and Barbuda. And what they ought to have done with them, if they had a caring government, if they wanted to Antiguan people to progress and not just be washing, cooking, and cleaning hotels, was to make that part of the University of Antigua and Barbuda. University of the West Indies. And to have our already established know-how in agriculture built upon. It hasn't been done. They wiped it out. You hear about it that's cotton there was the best in the world. And why would a government that is seeking employment for its people and seeking to get people having skills and abilities cannot hold those lands and produce Sea Island cotton and sell to the world? It's a very small estate. It's a very small plot of land to producing anything. But it wasn't the size. It was the quality. Because anybody who knows Charles Stewart shirts, you really don't want much more after you put on one of those shirts. The size and the feel and the texture. The attention to detail. Stuff that appears to be all gone now. We do not have the land which is earmarked for generation, ancients before times that was producing cotton. Why did they produce cotton there? Because it was the best place to produce cotton. And it's all gone now because of a greedy, uncaring, myopic government. They can't see too far down the line. All they see is housing plots where you had the best cotton in the world being produced on a small scale. So it's a niche market. People would travel in into Antigua if we develop that properly and say, we need to get that Sea Island cotton from Antigua. We're not a big island. We can't mass produce anything. But you can produce the best cotton on small plots of lands. And that is what we should have gone into. It is a loss. It is a great loss. You know, 15th of December, he gave his budget speech, the Prime Minister. He said that 8% of the budget was dedicated not just to agriculture. He said it was 8% of our economy was for 3 areas. I can't remember what the third area was, but agriculture and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and something else got 8% of the budget. So agriculture don't get 8%. As you get agriculture have a splice with 2 other areas of government for the 8% of the budget. Now, people would think that Mr. Brown knows what he's all about. And they call him the world boss or something like that. But I would like to go into not the world boss, but a man who cared for his people, not only of his time, but future generations. I'd like to take Antigua and Barbuda back to the 1st of November 1981, when my grandfather gave his speech at flag raising ceremony in Antigua Recreation Grounds. It was titled Masters of Our Own Destiny. And this is what he says. I'm just giving you all an excerpt from what he said. Speaking not only to the generations that were alive then, I was 10 years old, but future generations of Antigua and Barbuda. And I haven't heard of any prime minister or any leader speak like this about Antigua, the Antiguan people, and what they ought to do for us to remain an independent nation. My people, we are free this night, but freedom cannot exist without responsibility. The full burden of our freedom now rests squarely upon our shoulders. What we do with that freedom is our own responsibility. We can blame no other. Part of the responsibility of freedom is to protect it. As a small developing country with little resources other than beaches, land, and people, we have to safeguard our freedom by ensuring that we never become dependent again. The ultimate safeguard of independence is productivity. This nation, born again tonight, must commit itself to work and to work hard. For if we fail to do so, the consequences of our failure will be dependence on a new master who will, once again, dictate our policies and direct our affairs. We must not have struggled so long and with such fortitude to exchange one master for another. People of Antigua and Barbuda, I call on you to pledge yourselves to freedom. Rise up to the task of protecting our independence by creating an economically self-reliant nation, founded on the dignity of labor and the value of work. He mentions self-reliance several times. He mentioned responsibility several times. He mentioned dependence, not to be dependent, 2 or 3 times in there also, just in 4 paragraphs I read you from that speech. Now you tell me, from what I read you, and be honest with yourself, even if Gaston and Labour Party gave you $100 today and you feel like you owe them your loyalty, not only yourself, your family, but your future generations, kind of gave you $100 and you feel a smile and grin up in your face, so you're special, and they call you comrade and you feel like you're on the winning team. What can the destruction of the last farmlands in the north of the country that produced the finest cotton in the world, that if we really take the time and plan strategically and develop it as not only a farm, not only as a research center, but a tourist destination where people can come off the boat and do a tour of our cotton fields, get a little sample of the cotton to carry home, and if we can even make 1 or 2 shirts or some garments for them, maybe not at the quality of Charles Stewart, but of a quality where they can say, I went to the West Indies in Antigua and Barbuda. I visited a farm with the finest cotton, the Sea Island cotton that you've heard so much about. We don't see that in America. We don't see that in Europe. We don't see that in any other island. But my vacation in Antigua was different from the other islands. Where are our leaders today to plan like that? This Papa Bird is talking about self-reliance. We live in a world today where we just suffered the pandemic. And as I mentioned in the beginning of my podcast, where the world supply chains were interrupted. We live in a world now where Europe, China, Russia, North Korea, the Middle East has the potential to explode. Where are we going to feed our people? And at a point in time where you're having such a world conflict, and people be signing up to join armies, and people we have drafted to join armies, who do you think is going to be coming on the vacation to Antigua during a major military conflagration? Who do you think is going to be going to the West Indies if we only have one industry? You could even say that you're probably even making cotton to ship abroad for them to go make their uniform or go make their socks. We don't do that. We think that the tourism economy is going to be always there. Dunbars had the finest cotton in the world. And as a little boy, going west down at Friars Estate, just by the pond, going that road there by um, West Indies Oil, to the bottom there, and you bump into Paddy James' house. To the north of that were other cotton fields in McKinnon's. Those have also, for the most part, have gone follow. But I really would suggest that well-meaning and upright citizens in Antigua and Barbuda who love their country do more than just talk about what is happening. Because our future generation won't even know, will hear us talk, but cannot even imagine that up at Friars Hill and Dunbars Estate, we produce something better than anybody else in the whole entire world. But we choose to prefer, instead of having a skill or ability or to live off the land and produce something that nobody else have, we want to go open up another hotel like every other West Indian island. We used to lead in that also, but we are following the leaders now. But we have gold in Antigua and we shut our eyes to it. What they're doing up at Dunbars is they're killing the golden egg, the golden goose. They're killing the goose that laid the golden egg. It is a shame, and I implore all Antiguans and Barbudans who are opposed to this, we need to have some response. It should not go and left without some protests, because future generations will hold us responsible for going quietly into the night and allowing this madman and his stupid looking family to do this to our country. And the rest of the bull poopers in the cabinet, they're all a set of bull poopers. Tell them I said so. And tell them if I'm lying. I would ask you all, Antiguans, we need to protest this. What shape and form it should take, it needs to be planned. I am up for any form of protest to let this government back the hell up, because it's not benefiting you, me, Antigua and Barbuda, or future generations. That is my post for tonight. Stay safe, end the occupation in Antigua and Barbuda, and free Antigua. Because we are occupied by corrupt politicians and their corrupt so-called foreign investors. They have ruined paradise on earth while they say the investments are coming. That's not what it is. It's corrupt. Take good care, and you'll see me again real soon. Bye for now.